Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's TP Talk webinar. Today's TP Talk is the subject of RPA and how it's changing the type and work agents perform and the customer experience. This will be a very practical point of view. I'm your moderator, Amit Shankadas, Executive Vice President for Global Market Engagement at Teleperformance. And we'll be joined by two distinguished speakers today, Brian Cantor and Pankaj Kohli. I'll introduce them in a few minutes. But first, a couple of housekeeping items. There's several related resources available for you to download in the resource widget to the right of your screen. Please do so anytime during the webinar. This webinar is designed to be interactive, so you will see multiple icons at the bottom of your console. If you have questions, we'd love for you to interact with us. Submit your questions in the Q&A window to the left of your screen. Do this anytime during the conversation, and we'll address them during our Q&A sessions at the end of this webinar. Should you have any technical issues, click on the Help widget. It's a box that looks like a question mark, and if you'd like to reach out directly to us, please use the email widget. So what is TP Talks? As curators of the customer experience, we at Teleperformance are pleased to bring you this series of webinars. TP Talks is a 30-minute bite-sized webinar segment designed to help you as curators of your customer experience at your companies to learn from best practices, big trends, innovations, and most importantly, real-world success stories from people and companies like yourself. Teleperformance has worked diligently with our clients to curate this content for you, and there are several of these available on demand. You can always access them on the resource widget to the right of your screen. A little bit about Teleperformance, your hosts of today's webinar. Teleperformance is a strategic partner to the world's leading companies, enhancing their customer experiences during each interaction they have with their customers. Our team of interaction experts, as you can see, a very global and expansive team, have successfully deployed a wide range of omnichannel solutions, blending humans with technology, with the highest security standards in the industry. And we do this on a very global basis. We're particularly proud of the awards we win and the recognition we get from analysts in various leadership quadrants that are published and the recognition that we receive from our clients for the ability to help curate their customer experiences and make a palpable difference to their brand. Why do I share this with you? Because TP is committed to partnering with our clients to help them succeed and differentiate. This webinar is a reflection of that commitment. I'd like to introduce you to our guest speakers. Brian Cantor leads all customer experience, contact center, technology, and employee engagement research initiatives at CCW. He authors CMP's industry-leading market studies and special reports. Additionally, he serves as managing editor and director for CCW Digital, which is the largest web publication and community for customer experience professionals. Pankaj Kohli leads the consulting work stream at Teleperformance Tibbs and has been part of the organization for over 16 years. He and his team work on strategic projects for Teleperformance globally in the areas of digital transformation, project management, CS consulting, and analytics. He has personally led various BPO transformation projects across the globe. So for today, what we'll be talking about is the impact, implications, use cases of RPA and AI. We know the landscape is fast developing. Brian and Pankaj will share their insights on real-world examples, use cases of automation as a customer engagement tool, a process improvement tool, and an augmentation tool. They will bring to life this high-touch, high-tech solution. With that, Brian, maybe we should kick off first with you and talk through how automation can be used as a customer engagement tool.
Definitely, and I just want to say it is an absolute pleasure to be here. Automation and the impact of RPA is one of those conversations that so often is we talk in broad strokes and big buzzwords and big concepts, and we don't dive into the nuances of what it takes to actually achieve success. We don't think about the ramifications for our customers, for our agents. And I believe through the conversational framework we've adapted today, we will answer those questions. We will dive into the depths of what it takes to truly succeed with automation in your environment. Now, the first part of our conversation is going to be automation as a customer engagement tool. Now, for all intents and purposes, this is the chatbot discussion. And you can't avoid that discussion. It's everywhere. And you absolutely shouldn't avoid that because chatbots really do have the power to bring tremendous value to the customer experience. But what you should do, and in the name of your customer experience, what you need to do is start focusing on the right kind of value. Yes, chatbots can theoretically handle many of the issues that right now are being solved by your live agents. And so when you think about that, when you think about the idea of a technology being able to kind of divert or direct some of these calls from your agents, it's very easy to get caught up in the appealing efficiency and convenience benefits. It's very easy to get swept up in that and say, okay, let's just shift some of our boring calls or our transactional calls to bots, and our contact center will be more efficient and our experience will be more convenient. You can do that. But I'm here to tell you that it's far more compelling to look at areas where chatbots are actually more valuable than live agents. Not just areas where they're good enough to get the job done or where they theoretically can solve the customer's problem, but areas where they should be solving the problem. Because when you do that, you won't simply be keeping up, you'll be improving. So I've identified some of the examples right here, and I want to walk through them. One would be cases where you have a clear question and answer as opposed to a discovery process. An example might be, let's say you're asking about a gym membership cancellation policy as opposed to diving deep into a fitness plan with your trainer. Obviously, if you want to go into the nuances of what it takes to get ripped, you might want to talk to your trainer. But if you're just talking about the logistics of the gym, that's something where a bot can actually handle that a lot more accurately and effectively. Another area would be when accuracy is the absolute priority. This could be when you're talking about compliance issues, specific due dates, payment updates. These are areas where there's a clear right and wrong, and you want to make sure the data is going to be accurate for the customer. Bots can make sure they communicate that accuracy, whereas with humans, you may have the human error component or interpretation or inconsistency, and that could lead to a negative experience. You also want to have the idea of prioritizing speed over relationship building. So in these cases where, let's say you're urgently in need to change your flight, as opposed to getting details about joining the airline's priority club, you're going to want to use a bot. If you want to know about all the long-term perks you can have as a loyal customer, that might be a case for a live agent. Another area here is when you're executing actions or transactions instead of having conversations. This might be when you're trying to change an order or check out within the web window. That's far better for the customer, far easier than having to try and process an order over the phone. An example I like to give here is, let's say you ordered pizza from a restaurant and you decided you wanted an extra order of garlic knots with your pizza. You can call that restaurant. Here, there's all background noise. It's all super loud. The person there has to look up your order number, has to add it to the order, has to tell the delivery guy that you want more garlic knots, has to read all the prices. That's very ineffective for a human to do. If you can instead pull out an app or pull out your SMS software, message the bot and say, hey, I want to add garlic knots, it can easily pull up your order number, easily give you the new price. It's convenient, it's effective, it's what today's customers are looking for. And then another one would be when you're identifying customers based on account information over personality. So if you want to really focus on specific aspects of their account history, their payments and all that, a bot can crunch that data far faster than a human can. There's obviously a lot of specific industry use cases on top of this, but this framework really dives deep into what it takes to understand when bots can deliver value. But it goes beyond just bots being good at engagement in their own right. One of the real value sources here is that bots can empower the digital transformation. They actually allow you to be more effective in digital channels. As it is right now, our data confirms that organizations are still primarily using the phone channel and customers are still primarily gravitating toward the phone channel. The reality is that digital channels just aren't capable enough right now. The experiences are subpar, and customers just don't want to use them. They don't feel comfortable there. With chatbots, however, you can make digital far more robust and therefore more appealing. When self-service is better, customers are going to feel more comfortable using digital environments. You can also use chatbots in tandem with live agents to help scale things like chat and messaging, therefore allowing you to be able to deliver a great messaging or chat experience even if you don't have a ton of resources in-house right now. And as bots are more conversational than traditional self-service channels, they're also going to be able to gather more context about customers and then pass that context to the agent, which will result in stronger interactions overall and a better omni-channel experience. Now, finally, as I wrap up this section, I just want to touch on the idea of return on automation. Are you getting your value? The reality is you should be able to look directly at your traditional customer satisfaction or net promoter or metrics in that vein because you are trying to boost the overall experience. But there are also intermediate metrics you can look at to know whether your automation tools are doing what they're supposed to be doing and really impacting the journey the way you anticipated. You want to look at things like self-service and digital containment rate. Were issues being fully resolved in these channels, or are customers still screaming to escalate to a phone agent? You want to look at things like the change in call volume and cost per call. If bots are handling simple tasks, then that should change the types of calls you're getting to your live agents in your call center, and that will have an impact on volume and cost. And obviously you want to look at overall digital channel usage and abandonment just to know whether you're steering all that in the right direction. So with that, I've created a framework really detailing some of the benefits and the value points of chatbots and automation for customer engagement, but I know that we have some specific examples that really look at what this looks like in practice.
Yeah, Pankaj, I think that was a reference to some of the work that you guys have done in implementing several chatbots and use cases specifically.
Thank you, Brian. That was an excellent overview. Let me start by giving introduction of an automation solution that Teleperformance has developed for one of our leading customers in the logistics industry. That's a simple screenshot that you see on the screen. But in a sense, what we have done is we've built a chatbot, which is based on principles of natural language processing and machine learning, which is equipped to answer our customers' frequently asked questions and top queries, such as in the logistics industry, people generally ask for tracking and tracing their posts and couriers. So what this chatbot does is that as soon as you log into it, it asks you for what is your query type. Not only is it programmed to answer direct questions, it is conversational in nature. And what that means is that it also helps to retain the customer experience, which is very important. It's important that customers do not feel that they're talking to a robot, and that's very important. After we've implemented this chatbot for this customer, we've seen that the containment rate, something that Brian also referred to on the previous slide, has increased to about 75% of all the cases which have been programmed on the bot. And customer satisfaction scores are comparable, if not better, to human advisors. This is an excellent example of how chatbots can be implemented in real-life scenarios to help our customers.
Great, thanks, Pankaj. And Brian, we've talked about RPA as a tool to help the customer experience. The other thing it can do is help remove the task from the agent. I think you referred to it as a process improvement tool.
Absolutely. And now, I like to think I'm a really intelligent guy and that I say all this exciting and groundbreaking stuff, but the next thing I'm going to say is actually not that groundbreaking. Agent productivity is a major concern. Now, I know you all know this is obvious. I know you all agree with it because it's common sense, first of all. And second of all, we've also done extensive research confirming this issue. As part of our executive profiling with CCW Digital, we found that 80% of organizations say that their agents have to access multiple systems in order to process a support issue for a customer. We've seen that nearly 50% say that their agents right now are spending too much time on those rote and repetitive and boring tasks. And of course, more than 50% are actually going to be specifically focusing on optimizing workflow and actually measuring productivity rate moving forward. So you put all this together and you have a clear takeaway. If automation can perform some of these repetitive and cumbersome tasks, it's going to make your agents more productive. It's going to allow them to focus on what really matters to your business. More often than not, if you're in the contact center, that's going to be engaging with customers. But whatever your company defines as high-value work, the goal is to create a framework where agents can shift their focus and their time and their workflow to the work that really matters. Now, the beauty of this concept is that it's not just about that whole cliche of let's have bots do the boring tasks so that agents can focus on stuff they want to do. This isn't just about shifting workflow. It's about making workflow better. The simple reality is that machine-driven tools are far better than humans are at a lot of repetitive tasks. Things like data entry, reporting, scheduling, and call logging. Humans just aren't great at that, and since they are just not equipped for it. So even though they're spending a lot of time on it, they're actually delivering an inferior, more error-driven final product. And if you switch to automation, you don't only free them up to do more high-value work, you actually make those repetitive tasks get performed better. So it's really win-win for your contact center. But before we get too excited, before you start just pulling out the balloons and popping the champagne about these benefits, you do have to acknowledge a clear reality. If we start shifting some of these tasks to process automation, what happens next? What is that next step? I feel like so often we get excited and caught up in that cliche, bots for simple tasks and humans for complex ones, but we forget that many of our agents have been trained and conditioned to do simple work. And so if we're suddenly going to expect them to do more high-value work and more meaningfully engage with customers, we have to properly train them and start measuring them against this new standard. We have to put them in position to be that high-value agent because right now, more often than not, they are a transactional employee. Additionally, you want to think about what's going to happen if right now they're spending 25% of their time on simple tasks, as an example, and suddenly you're freeing up that 25%. What are they doing with that extra time? How are you maximizing their workflow so that you as a leader, you as a budget holder, are getting that optimal ROI? These are all things you absolutely have to consider, and these are all things that really tie into the next case study that I know the TP team wants to share.
Thanks, Brian. And Pankaj, as you jump into this, you said something really interesting when we were prepping for this. You said, as you look at these processes that you might want to remove from an agent or automate from an agent, you should first look and determine if the process is even appropriate or it should change versus just simply automating it.
Absolutely. Which leads into this next case study of ours, which is from the e-commerce world, wherein we manage seller queries for a leading e-commerce provider. Now, it's often heard that we need to retain customers and customer churn is very important. But equally important in today's world is to retain your sellers, because if you don't take care of them, then there are many alternate seller portals which are available where sellers can switch. In this example, we manage seller queries for one of the leading e-commerce companies. And what happens here is that we get seller queries for things like either their payments are not cleared or there's a grievance that they have, etc. And advisors typically do this manual activity of logging into multiple systems, compile all the information, and get them ready to solve a business case. So what you see on the screen is a typical process, and as I move on to the next one, you see how we have been able to use intelligent robots during the entire customer journey to be able to automate it. Interestingly, as Amit was referring to, the first box has got a cross in front of it, which means that when you're automating something, it's not only about adding robots. It is also about looking at the process intelligently to see whether do we even need that process, which goes onto this entire new thing about design thinking. But coming back to this example, what we did was we applied the robots where they were necessary, got the human intelligence where required, which is more of the new age hybrid ways of working, which led us to a great about 40% of saving or getting efficiency in this. And when we talk of efficiency, it is not just cost efficiency. It is also about customer experience. And in this case, sellers are the ones that are really valuable to us. Again, a great example of how intelligent automation can not only help our customers, but also aid our advisors in this sense.
Thanks, Pankaj. There's so many instances where agents have multiple systems, and you're exactly right, they have to compile information, cut and paste, jump around, highly inefficient. And to the extent that you can make an agent more efficient or the process more efficient, you can see the results it can achieve. To that point, Brian, talking about making agents work better, RPA has a huge place to play in that role, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, I think over the last two sections, we talked about how automation can perform tasks in its own right very well. But ultimately, one of the biggest areas is actually how it can make agents better at their jobs. And that's by it truly can augment performance. And the beauty of this, I'm going to dive into how this works and how you think about it, but the beauty of the augmentation approach is that this would apply even if you're in super complex environments where the idea of a chatbot may not make sense for your organization, or if there's a lot of back-end work where it's so complex that you're not yet ready to trust it to automation, there's still a place for automation to play a role, and that's on the augmentation side. That's basically where it's making agents better, because right now, if you look at the environment, agents have to deal with a lot of clutter. I mentioned earlier how they have to look at multiple screens typically when they're supporting customers. They also have to deal with so many different sources of effort, from frantically trying to understand knowledge bases, trying to interpret CRM data, trying to authenticate customers properly, whatever it may be, and this effort directly hurts their ability to deliver a great experience. More importantly, since they're so flustered and so struggling and fumbling in the back end to make everything work, they're not actually being communicative with customers. They're not really delivering an interactive, personalized conversation, and so even if technically they get the right information on the back end, they're not presenting it in a way that makes the customer happy. They're not building a relationship. They're essentially just repeating information, and guess what? We can have bots do that for a lot less money and a lot more consistently. So if agents aren't actually able to connect, they're not really fulfilling their role. And that's where automation for augmentation comes into play. What you want to first do is start identifying these sources of effort. What right now is making life miserable for your agents? And what can you then do to address that pain? There's a million examples. I put some on the screen right now that you can see. This would be things like, allowing for an easier knowledge base or a more up-to-date knowledge base. This might involve intelligent routing, where instead of having a generic kind of concierge figuring out who the customer should be talking to, you route them directly to the right agent so the agent can get right down to business. This would be more relevant screen pops. So instead of having the human agent have to dig through the CRM, dig through the knowledge base to figure out what's relevant, the automation and AI-driven tool would just put the right information in their hand as the customer calls based on some authentication or identity triggers, and allow them to focus on, again, using the information to connect with customers, because that's what the agents should be doing. They should be connecting, not investigating. And when they're able to connect and they're able to truly use data to make the most of a moment, that's when you have a great customer experience. But I just want to say before I close and move on to the case study, automation is not just about streamlining effort for agents. It's also about empowerment. And one of the biggest areas that we see a lot of organizations doing, a big telecom company recently told me that they've been using this in millions of interactions throughout the year, and that's the idea of next best action recommendation. So by looking at the analytics and the sentiment of the call, looking at product issues or past behavioral data, the platform will actually tell the agent what they should say next or what they should do next, and the likelihood that it will have the proper effect on customers. And within your industry and within your contact center, you can obviously tailor this tool to focus more on sales or more on marketing. But the idea is coaching agents using automation to make the right decision in the right moment. That's a great experience for you. And now I know that we have another case study really diving into the augmentation approach.
Great, thanks, Brian. Pankaj, your case study to review.
Thank you. And this is the last example for the day from the airline industry, where passengers call for things like change of flights or amendments that they need to do, which we all do all the time. So just imagine a customer calling in for a ticket that they booked from, say, Hong Kong to London to New York, and they want to make an amendment to one of their legs. What actually happens at the back end is that the advisors need to log into complex GDS systems, which are nowhere like our Windows systems. They are age-old green terminal systems where they have to enter various commands to get that information. So what the advisor needs to do is log into the GDS, search for the PNR, log in and check the fare rules and advise the customer what would happen if they want to change a particular leg in the overall journey. And they take about 5 or 7 minutes to be able to do that. And just imagine the customer comes back and say, by the way, can you tell me the same thing for another day? And the advisor needs to do the entire thing again. So what we did here is a good example of using automation to be able to aid our advisors whilst they're on the call. In this case, again, whilst the advisor manages the call, the robot does everything else from working on the GDS to pull out the customer details and the fare history of the PNR. It simplifies all of the information by bringing all the required information into a very simple to understand screen and provides the various permutations and combinations that may be required for the advisor to manage that call. With this implementation, what we were able to do is reduce about 30% of the overall processing time, leading to not only a reduction in cost, but more importantly, the NPS, which was earlier at 8%, improved to 25%. Another indirect benefit of this was improvement in retail loss, which is that whenever an advisor used to provide this information about penalties or any other fares, if they were making a mistake in doing that, with automation, we were able to contain that to a great extent. Again, a great example of how we are able to use automation with helping our advisors whilst they're managing a live call.
Great, thank you, Pankaj. With that, time to take some questions. If you have any questions, please submit them using the question module at the bottom. We've received several. I'll kick off with the first one. Pankaj, I'll start with you on this one. The question is RPA about improving CX or improving efficiencies and reducing costs and FTE?
Well, that's a very common question, Amit, that we get. RPA is often considered as a tool to automate and reduce cost. But in our experience, if we reduce effort, customer experience is the first beneficiary of improved efficiency, and reduced cost is achieved automatically. On the contrary, we have witnessed many implementations go wrong when providers have only focused on reduction of cost, which may have helped them in the short term, but has a negative impact on CX, which has not helped them on the overall basis.
Brian, what's your take on this?
Yes, I think that's exactly it. I think the answer is yes and yes to all this question. It's everything. If you're using automation correctly, you should see both benefits. And I think the idea is figuring what you focus on should hinge on what your project is. If you're talking about self-service or a traditional customer experience or customer engagement endeavor, you have to look at elevating the customer experience first. When you focus on what is going to make a great chatbot experience, you're going to get customers feeling comfortable, feeling satisfied using your bot. They'll be happy, and then yes, your costs will go down because a lot of your potential high costly calls will be deflected to bots. Internally, you may have areas where you're looking at how do we make our processes more efficient, and by focusing on the efficiency side, what you do is you free up agents to deliver a better customer experience. So whether if you're focusing externally, you want to prioritize the experience. Internally, it's okay to be a little bit more cost-minded, just remembering that ultimately these things go hand in hand. So if your automation tool is doing what it's supposed to do, if it's raising the customer experience and self-service, it's going to reduce overall costs. And if it's removing inefficiencies inside the contact center, it's going to allow your agents to deliver a better experience. So they do go hand in hand. It's just about knowing what your project is and focusing on the right intermediate objective and goal for that project.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Pankaj, I'll throw this one to you. I think we have time for one more question. The question is, with RPA coming in, how can the call center be envisioned?
Okay. Firstly, I'd like to say that contact centers are here to stay. For all those who are worried that this industry may vanish, may be disappointed that nothing of this sort may happen, anytime soon. What may change for sure are the skill sets for our employees, which means that people may have to upskill themselves since more complex roles may come into the contact center. However, what's expected surely is that one has to have a proper mix of high tech along with high touch. It's after all important to remember that we are dealing with actual people and humans after all, and therefore not everything cannot be automated directly.
You're exactly right, Pankaj. We live in a world where empathy is hugely important. With that, unfortunately, we have run out of time to answer additional questions. Those questions that we could not get to, we will definitely get to them. Brian, Pankaj, thank you so much for your insights, and not just insights, but your very practical approach to how RPA can be implemented and success can be achieved. With that, we come to the end of this TP Talks. An on-demand version of this TP Talks will be available shortly. Please remember, download resources available to you, and stay tuned for a future TP Talks. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Brian, Pankaj, thank you both.